Discover how to create the perfect place to work to build a thriving culture in today's episode with Chris Dyer. Chris Dyer is the #1 leadership speaker on culture, and he is recognized for that. And he's also a remote work expert. And as a former CEO managing thousands of people, his companies consistently were named a best place to work. So, Chris, tell us what makes your companies some of the best places to work in the world, and how can entrepreneurs create the same thing in their company?
Welcome to Awakened Titans podcast with Lily Patrascu. Mind-blowing conversations with influential business titans sharing how you can manifest abundance, love, joy, success through quantum awakening, quantum manifestation, quantum healing, quantum miracles, exponential business growth, and innovative products and services.
Well, that's a big question. So the heart of it is that we have to make culture as the CEO, as the entrepreneur, as the leader of that team, wherever you are in the leadership spectrum. You might have 5 people you're leading, you might have 5,000, but can you make culture? Can you make the work that people do as the best it possibly can be? And that means removing obstacles, making work suck less. That means finding ways to align people into the work where they have the most energy and passion. Those are really key areas versus just, well, get them in, do the job, I don't care, or do what I say because I said so. There's so much around making it a place where people really want to be there.
Thank you. So where would someone start when attempting to create the perfect place to work?
I always like to start with transparency. So, I can tell you a little story. Like, back when I first started really experimenting with transparency, I had people coming to me with the same 3 ideas. Like, they would start and then they would have this idea that everyone else had, like in the first week of working there. And then about a month later, they had the same idea everyone else did. And then by like the 3rd time they had the same idea everyone else did because they were learning in that process, they learned to stop asking and to stop bringing ideas because they figured everyone else had already thought of them. And so we had to create more opportunities for people to learn and to grow and to understand more about our company, what we were trying to do, why we did what we did, how we spent the money, what our expenses were, providing them that deep information. And then they started coming to us with really good ideas and really great ways to help the company. Not the surface level, easy stuff that everyone observes in the beginning, but also fostering that curiosity to say, yeah, that is an idea that generally people have, first weekend, but let me give you a lot more information now so you can really understand deeply. And maybe the next time you have an idea, it will actually be valuable.
Thank you. So is the main idea that you're creating a workspace where people feel not only encouraged, but they're more than encouraged to take initiative, because that's the thing that makes them feel valuable.
Right. Absolutely. And it's a habit they have to get into. So the habit is partly how the leader reacts, and the habit is partly how does that employee act, and then what do we do with that to really make this a better place for everyone to work.
Thank you. Tell us more about the intangible versus the tangible ways that an employee could feel valued and could feel that you are offering the perfect place to work.
Well, that's a matter of alignment. So perfect place to work, I guess, would really depend on a lot of factors. But when we're getting this right, we are being very open and honest about who we are as a company, what our culture really is. And, people like us do things like this, and people like us don't do things like that. And if we can get really, really clear about that, then the right people, when I mean the right people, I just mean the aligned people, will come into our organization. Because maybe you and I go start a company and it's very touchy-feely and we talk about our feelings all the time, and that's a place where we all want to work. Or maybe you and I start a company and it's very fast-paced and it's very business, and maybe once a year we talk about our feelings, but we are goals, get things done. And that's a place where certain kinds of people want to work. Both of those cultures are great. They're just different and they act differently, and they're going to attract different types of people. So the first thing we can do is be really honest about who we are and who we're looking for, and not lie to people or not put on a fake sort of like we want to be this company, but really we're not. We say we want to talk about everyone's feelings, but like we're really a fast-paced, cutthroat company. Just be honest, and you'll get the right people to kind of fill those gaps.
Thank you. What's a good way to create the culture that fits your style? Like, how do you even know what your style is?
Well, it's usually heavily determined. In a small company, it's going to be really determined by the owner or the CEO. In a larger company, it's going to be set by the leader of that division or that unit, that group of people that will really set the tone for, how it is. So you have to think about how it is you want to work and what it is in your perfect working, environment. How do you operate? Do you slow down to talk to people? Do we coach them? Do we mentor them? Is it trial by fire and just go hard and make mistakes and we'll figure it out later? Again, those are subtle differences on how a team or an organization might react. But you need to get really, really clear about who you are as a leader. What does success look like? And what are you looking for in your people and in those actions that you take on a regular basis?
Thank you. One funny thing about me is that I may look a little bit antisocial when I'm at work. And what I mean by that is that I'm like so focused on actually achieving the goals that were set that I don't spend any time like chit-chatting or like doing anything other than what's supposed to be done. And but after work, once like we've achieved the goal, I'm like the most fun person you'll meet. But if you were to meet like work Lily versus like focused work Lily versus after work Lily, you would think we're two different people. So I wonder, how do you meet that balance of allowing people to be how they want to be at work?
Yeah, I mean, and that's pretty typical for people to be one way at work and a different way at home, or in a different way socially. So what we want is to make sure that we're having those conversations with our people. If in that situation, let's say I was your boss and I noticed that shift in you was actually hurting your business performance, then maybe we have a conversation about that. Like, how could you find little micro moments to show your personality and connect with people in meaningful ways at work so they feel like you care, they feel like you like them, you understand, whatever. Now, it may be that that's perfectly great and we don't need you to do that. And if they want to hang out with you socially, then that's fine too. There's the roles will depend on that, and the company will depend. But I think that's like kind of one-on-one, right? That leader and that person needs to kind of figure out what is that right balance. Because you're right, there are people, and there are the opposite. There's people that all they want to do is chit chat and talk, and they're not getting much work done, and they're driving everyone else around them nuts because they won't shut up, and people are trying to get their work done. So that's a pretty big lever for leadership to figure out and have those conversations with their people.
Yeah, so what I find as a funny story around that is that my partner Harry and I, we make a really good team because like we've had to move house a few times, and every time we do, like we actually get involved in the actual moving process. And what I find quite funny is that Harry is very good at the chit-chatting part. He kind of like cheers everyone on and like makes jokes and doesn't actually do that much like lifting or anything like that. Whereas like I'm very focused on the actual task done. And by the time he would have, gone around the block one time, I would have done like 50 runs. So sometimes I think you can find people in the company to kind of balance you out. And I find that's the thing that he does for me. Do you find that matching people up somehow creates that kind of perfect place to work company culture as well?
Yeah. So, what we're really talking about here is leveraging our strengths. And there are going to be situations where your strengths are going to be the thing that we can lean on that are really going to help us. And then there's those times when other strengths that somebody else has are going to be really, really important. And so when we know what our strengths are and we know where we really shine, and we can lean in on that, but we also can avoid those things where we're not strong. And so to your point, you have that other person where that they're really strong at motivating people and keeping them happy and encouraged while that thing was happening. And maybe you're the taskmaster, right? You got the list and you're like telling people, do this, do this, do that. And you're helping keeping everyone organized, but he's keeping everyone, keeping their spirits high. That's the perfect relationship with a team member or a co-founder or whatever, a co-leader, to have that you both can recognize where you're strong and each do your thing where you're going to be awesome. Instead of both trying to do that, or you trying to be like them and then you feel awkward and unhappy, and they feel awkward and unhappy because they're trying to do what you're doing. The moment I just totally let my senior team be who they were and to really focus on their strengths, and anything they weren't particularly great at, we had somebody else do it. Man, did we soar. Man, were things so much better for us because we weren't trying to do things that we were not so good at.
Thank you. Tell us some key steps that you applied in your company that perhaps contributed to being named one of the best places to work.
Yeah, one of the things that we did that got a lot of attention early on is I changed all of the meeting types very dramatically. So what I noticed is that we were coming together and we were having the same meeting over and over and over again. It was the same length. It followed the same structure. For a while when we were in person, that was in person, but when we went remote, it was the same 30-minute remote meeting on Zoom. And we'd all come on and we'd all do the pleasantries, and then we would get to the business, and then we would do inevitably there was the 1-minute dash to get off the Zoom, and we hadn't quite done the what comes next conversation, and we hadn't figured things out. Like it was very repeatable and somewhat boring and predictable. And so I changed the meetings. We gave them all different meeting names, and they had different amounts of time. And we put very strict rules around these meetings, like they had to start on time. They could not ever go over what was covered, what wasn't covered. Certain meetings, we never talked about the weather and our kids and how we were doing. It was get on, what's the issue, and get off, and we're done. And other meetings, it was, well, let's talk, let's get connected, let's, see how the team is doing. And that made it so much easier for people because they knew, okay, well, on Friday mornings when I get together with my team, that's when I ask them, how are things going and what's the weekend plans, and really connect with them. And if you're an introvert or someone that doesn't like doing that, you can tolerate doing that once a week. It's really not tolerable to do it every single meeting 7 times a day, trying to, the day's fine. Yeah, it's raining. Yeah, okay, can we talk about the business now? People get frustrated, but we didn't give anybody the rules. So when we started creating these really intentional meeting types, that helped our productivity just skyrocket, and people started grabbing attention to that. We had a big write-up in Inc. magazine about all these different types that we were doing. A lot of companies have copied them and used them and really taken them to whole other places we never imagined to make meetings a really powerful tool instead of a necessary evil for organizations.
Thank you. That was the top 3 case studies of companies you have worked with where you made some suggested changes for their culture, and where they implemented that and it made a significant difference in terms of what they were doing or they were not doing.
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate to work with a lot of different organizations, and so sometimes it's a matter of changing their meetings, like we talked about. That is enough to change the culture. When I go in and I have an employee say, "Listen, like I don't even have time to get my work done. I'm in so many meetings all day long that I have to go home and do my work." Like when I heard that, I was like, that's insane. We have to fix that for you. So in one organization, we figured out how to eliminate 40% of their meetings and really get their meetings tighter and better so that people had time to get their actual work done at work. That was really, really big. Another organization, I won't say them out loud, but they certainly are necessary. If you want to go to the moon, you better use this organization. I'll just say that. We helped them in measuring and understanding what was working and where were the really unique stories inside of their survey data. They wanted to know what were successful people doing, what were the best people in their organization doing and why were they happy? Why were the happiest people so happy? So this gets into my positivity pillar around being really curious about what is working. It's really easy to say these two salespeople are terrible. I'm going to go put all my time and energy on these two salespeople who are not making their quota. The best organizations say, what are the two salespeople doing that are making their quota? They're doing amazing. Why are they doing amazing? What is it about their process? What can we learn from them? That's what the best organizations do. And then they teach that to everybody else. And so this particular organization really wanted to understand why people who are really happy or performing at high levels, why were they doing that? And I helped them kind of figure that out through their survey data. And we came up with really unique stories that they could tell to their tens of thousands of employees to help them understand how to make small changes to their work-life balance, to their work in general, to be happier.
Thank you. What are the top mistakes that companies do in terms of creating a company culture?
What are some of the mistakes? So first of all is not being super intentional, not being very, very explicit about who you are, what your values are, what your goals are, and what you're trying to do. You need to be super explicit, and then you need to communicate that over and over and over again to your people. I have seen leaders that never even were explicit about that stuff. And if they were, they said it one time. They got up in a meeting one day and said, we're going to make $20 million. That's my big goal. And then they never said it again. And they expected everyone else remembered that. And everyone else was following that. Leaders need to show up and remind people over and over and over again. These are our values. This is what we do. This is our goal. This is what we're doing to get to our goal. This is what we're trying to do in order to be successful.
Wow, that is very interesting. Tell us about some of the habits that companies should get into to practice so that they make sure that they continuously optimize their workplace so that they continuously create a best possible culture at work.
Yeah. So, aside from making sure we're transparent, we're focusing on what's positive. One of the other really interesting factors that we've seen great organizations do is they know how to leverage mistakes, meaning that they can have an environment where people are allowed to try things, allowed to fail, that we're not going to yell and scream and fire them, that we want them to try to make things better. And that really allows us to be better, right? To be able to do some of that different.
I think you're muted.
Yep, there you go.
Okay. Okay. Tell us about how did you get into this business of helping companies be named best places to work, and why is that something that you're interested in?
I just kind of became an accidental keynote speaker and an accidental trainer. I was doing it with my company and people started asking me to help. And so I did that, and I really loved it, and I loved creating that change for people. And so it wasn't something I put on a goal sheet. It was just something that kind of happened by accident.
Thank you. And what is your mission at the moment related to creating the best places to work?
I'm really focused right now on trying to help people understand how to deal with AI and all of the change that's happening. So that's a big part. Culturally, how do we handle the change? How do we plan and deal with what is important with AI and why it's important, and then figuring out the how afterwards.
Okay, so tell us how AI is helping to create a better place to work for people.
Well, it should help us get rid of the simple tasks and the things that we don't really need to deal with. It should really help us be better in that way. And ultimately help us maybe optimize or to be able to elevate our work and hopefully find gaps and find areas where we could be better. I advise a startup right now that helps companies with corporate memory, right? To be able to make sure that we're recording this incredible amount of knowledge. And if somebody leaves or someone passes away, that we don't lose all of that knowledge right away, that we're able to maintain that and keep that.
Yes, I do think that is one of the keys of making any company successful, having that succession planning and also keeping that information, isn't it? I'm wondering about the communication. What needs to happen in the communication in order to create the best place to work?
communication has to be frequent. It has to be constant. We have to be, written and verbal and, said in so many different ways. The more we communicate in many different ways and we do it many, many times, that was a big learning for us, that we would tell people things and then like months go by and the senior team's been talking about it, but people were like, oh yeah, there was that thing you mentioned on a call one time. And so we had to get better about being more consistent. If it was important, we need to be bringing it up all the time. And then people were able to connect, understand how important it was, and be able to feel like they really understood the direction of the company.
Thank you. What are the best ways to create employee engagement and motivation?
Well, certainly making sure that we're listening to people. So creating surveys, creating opportunities for employees to tell us what they're thinking, what they're feeling, where their frustrations are, how can we help them in more succinct ways. The more we can do that, the higher our engagement levels can be, and we can work to get better slowly over time. I talked a lot about doing a one question survey every single week. So if you could ask your staff one question every week, and then actually do something with that information and try to get a little bit better all the time, how much better could your company be if you worked on it a little bit every week instead of just once a year when you do an annual survey?
What kind of question would you need to ask yourself or the team in order to make that happen?
It could be good things and it could be bad things. Like, what's draining you? What resource don't you have? What's your biggest issue right now? How am I, as your boss, getting in your way? What client is driving you nuts? And it also could be, who has really been helping you in the organization? Who should we be thanking that's not been getting any attention and recognition? That's, doing great. What innovation or what product or what service could we be offering that we haven't thought about? I mean, these are all different types of questions we can ask employees to make sure we feel like we're hearing them because they're seeing it on the front lines for us to make adjustments and improvements.
Thank you. How do you personally develop as a leader in order to create the best possible place to work for your companies?
Constantly be reading or listening to audiobooks. You need to be learning, and then being around peers and being around mentors, around people who are doing what you're doing or have done what you've done and learning from them and challenging your perceptions and being in that mode of always that learning and being able, listening to podcasts and listening to other people, whatever you can do to try to get inspiration and new knowledge that will help you get better all the time.
Thank you. What can companies learn from their failures that they can leverage in order to turn that into learning experiences that will help them become a best place to work?
Well, if they're open and honest to their staff and even their clients and vendors about those failures, and then asking for that feedback and asking for how they can get better, then they can get better. Now, if they hide from it and they pretend it didn't happen, then it's unlikely that they're going to learn from it or they're going to get better. So when we would screw something up, we go back to our staff and say, listen, we tried this thing and it didn't work, and this is how we screwed it up, and we would love your input on how we could make it better next time.
Thank you. How can companies make sure that their vision aligns with what they're actually doing?
Well, that's, again, that constant perception check with your staff of, hey, this is what's important, this is where we want to go, and then checking with them on how does that align, and what are we doing to get there, and does that make sense? It's that, creating that kind of circular communication of, this is what I need, this is what I need you to do, and then, okay, now how is it working, and how, what are you seeing actually in that job in that moment, and then making those adjustments in real time.
Thank you. How does employee work flexibility impact you and your company becoming a best place to work?
Well, I mean, this has certainly become a bit more controversial, but, COVID gave us the most remote work we've ever had. It democratized work for people. Typically, it was only leaders and salespeople that got to be hybrid or remote. And this allowed us to see and prove that so many more people could do it. So for us, it was a way to have the best talent around the world and not have just the best talent in my little city, but I had the best talent from around the world that could work for me anywhere. And it allowed us to compete against much bigger brands with a lot more money and a lot more, they could pay people a lot more than we could. And we could outperform them because I could hire a fantastic person who lived in a place where the cost of living was lower. I didn't have to pay them, 5 times the salary. So remote work for us was a huge way to do better, have better people, and operate in a way that was far more inclusive and far more, reactive to what our customers really wanted.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you.
You can find me at chrisdyer.com, or I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you hang out, I'm there. Come find me. I'm happy to connect and continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential business titans, providing you with the insights to awaken to your full potential so you can get paid to be yourself, find true happiness, and manifest anything you desire.